Okay, now where's Earth in all of this? Well, Earth is not going to come close to this comet. Let me just make that very clear. I was saying that March 3rd, 2026 is when this comet would start interacting with Jupiter, but the real perfect alignment here, I'm looking at the orbits right now, is going to be on around March 6th. So it could be a couple days after, but this thing is coming really, really close to Jupiter. In which case, because of the tail drag and the changing of orbit, this object could become perturbed by Jupiter, and we don't know. Could it be thrown out of the solar system? It's already going out of the solar system. Could it be dragged in to become a permanent member of our solar system, to become a moon or planet? It could be, and of course, what I've been saying all along since the very beginning, my early days at Cornell, 1979, 81, that time frame, I said solar systems are formed by capture. And this could be a perfect example, a living example, and Hale-Bopp was. For many years on my webpage, the very top thing I had up there was "Welcome Hale-Bopp, newest planetary member of our solar system." And that's what's going on. Hale-Bopp was a planet-sized object. It was captured. It was perturbed by Jupiter, and it reduced its orbit from about 4,250 years down to around 2,600 years. So it's literally becoming a new member of our solar system, and it's trapped. It's going to be here. Eventually, we could actually make a close approach to Hale-Bopp on one of its future returns to the solar system. Okay, so, but where is Earth during this whole time? We have a ringside seat, basically. And so what potentially could we see? We could see potentially a new planet forming. We could see a interaction with the planet Mars, an electrical interaction. We could see a perturbation of the orbits of the moons of Mars. We could see Mars, actually, if Mars is quite a bit bigger, we could see actually a perturbation of the orbit of the comet. And we could see also, once that interaction begins with Mars and the comet, when the comet really starts kicking up and becoming a large comet, we could potentially see it lose a lot of energy and become trapped due to tail drag. The drag of the tail coming into the comet nucleus because of the electrical forces. Okay, and so you have to read my books, etc., to understand the physics behind this. I'm not repeating what's in my books, by the way. And it's always very interesting to see traditional astronomers react, and they go, "Oh, McCanney is wrong about this." Well, they're just, all they're saying is my theoretical work doesn't agree with their baloney, their garbage science, and it doesn't. I'll be the first to admit that. What they're trying to pawn off, this dirty snowball comet model, is absolutely absurd. But they continue to pump this into the public through the news media, YouTube channels. There's got to be 100 YouTube channels out there with little scientist people running around that pretend they're scientists. They have no training at all, and they get hundreds of thousands of viewers. Why? Because they're being promoted, because they're pushing the garbage science. Okay, now I want to talk about the sunward spike. Now this is interesting because this comet, although it does not have a coma, this again, once again, is a contradiction that comes out of the astronomy community. They realize that this comet is the light that's coming back to us from the comet. It's all sunlight. Is not reflecting off of tail material. I already mentioned this, like hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, hydrocarbons, oxygen, carbon compounds, etc. It's just the reflected sunlight, which means that this comet has not developed a tail yet, and which makes sense because it's moving so fast. It is moving so fast, there's just not enough time for the tail material to accumulate. And that's why I was saying when it comes by Mars, we might get a pretty good view of this thing, and it might be in the shape of the Phoenix type of comet, because those are the ones that are moving fast. And by the way, you're not going to find this on the space.com or any place else. I've read the dribble that comes out of those places. It's just fantastically weak and just non-existent. But anyway, talking about the Sunward spike, which they're not going to tell you about either. This comet is already exhibiting a sunward spike. So if it's not tail material, this is the point, because then they say, oh, it's a jet that's coming out the front side of the comet nucleus. Well, that doesn't make any sense, because now they're going to have a jet that's moving at hypervelocity in front of this thing, and the solar wind would be pushing it back. It's just not going to develop. It's just not going to happen. So but the sunward spike is due to the electrical discharge. Now, moving very quickly would break down the solar capacitor much faster and cause a sunward spike. The sunward spike is the electron current, the pinched electron current coming out from the sun to the comet nucleus. And I always use the example of the backyard bug killer. The backyard bug killer, what is it? There's two plates, a high voltage plate. It's a grounded plate on the outside so you don't kill yourself. Inside plate, grid or screen, is a high voltage screen, and there's a light in the middle. Well, what happens? The bug flies in to go to the light and carries the ground potential in with him, and bam, the discharge occurs right where the bug is. Well, that's what's going on with the discharge of the solar capacitor. It's the same type of phenomenon. And so because the sun has a net negative charge in this capacitor, the solar capacitor, and it's built by an excess current of protons in the solar wind, protons being positively charged. And so when the discharge occurs, the primary charge carrier is in the form of electrons, negatively charged electrons. So they come out from the sunward side, and when they start to interact with material or gaseous material, even though very faint in this case, on the sunward side, it starts to produce, and this is something they should look at also, because they're going to be seeing X-rays on this comet, ultraviolet light, and certainly light that's not characteristic of material that's being ejected from an ice ball. Let's just put it that way. Okay, so this comet has a sunward spike, so I suspect that we're not going to see very much of a tail with this comet because it's moving so fast. There's just not enough time for that tail material to come in to the negatively charged comet nucleus. But it's exhibiting the sunward spike. Okay, so very interesting. And when it comes by Mars, and little Mercury comes swinging around, little spark plug Mercury, then and Mars, mind you, Mars is a long ways away from Mercury. So that's not guaranteed that that's going to work, but it's a very good possibility that the comet, which is already discharging the solar capacitor, Mars, which does not really discharge the solar capacitor that much. It's pretty far out there, it's pretty small, etc. It does not have a moon, which creates a magnetic field. All of these things are missing from Mars. And so, but when this comet comes aligned on, what did I say, October 2nd or 3rd, that time frame, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, in that time frame, we might see the discharge between the comet and Mars. Now, I want to talk about a little event called Tunguska. Okay, back in the mid-1990s, I had a long, very, very valuable collaboration with a group of Russian atmospheric scientists from the University of Novosibirsk in central Russia. They were atmospheric scientists, PhD physicists, And they were the scientists that went to the Tunguska site. Now, you hear a lot of banter about Tunguska on the internet today, that it was a bolide, there was an asteroid that came in and exploded 100 miles up in the air, or some craziness. But these are the scientists that were on site. And they, at first, of course, that was everybody's thought, that something came into the atmosphere like an asteroid and exploded due to the heating and caused this immense explosion. But what they found was that if such a thing happened, all of the residue from that bolide, whether it was water or carbonaceous chondrites or copper or whatever material it was made out of, would have pulverized, it would have peppered the entire surface right below it, and they found nothing. Okay, so here is what happened at Tunguska, and we figured this out, and the reason the Russians liked my work is because it explained the tornadoes on the sun they were observing, the fact that the fusion in the sun was in the atmosphere, not in the core of the sun. We eventually determined the mechanism for generation of energy in hurricanes, tornadoes, waterspouts, cyclonic storms on planet Earth, planet Mars. They also, at the same time, were observing the Schumacher-Levy 9 comet coming into the backside of Jupiter, showing that that proved the plasma discharge comet model. And more and more, that's just the tip of the iceberg. But the Tunguska event was a mystery because there was no residue on the ground of something exploding. And if it exploded, it would have had to have been very high up in the atmosphere. The explosion was at ground zero. It was at ground level. And so right at the center of the event at Tunguska, there's a hole. And it wasn't just one discharge, it was a number of them that they found. So it was something, it wasn't just one event, it was like a number of them. Okay, so at any rate, what we figured out was that there was a large electrical discharge from a small passing comet. And what happened is that people reported nights leading up to the event that the night sky was brightening. But they couldn't see anything. They could not see an object or something like that. And then after the event, the night sky faded away. Well, what was that? We were in the middle of a comet tail, basically, and seeing the light from the comet tail right there, ground right at point blank range. Okay, so what happened is there was an electrical discharge, and the ancients talk about this, the Moses event, where Moses is bringing the Israelites out of Egypt, the tornado reaching up into the sky, the tornado that was attached to the comet Venus. They could see it. They witnessed it. They were right there. Okay, so at any rate, there's an electrical discharge that came in from this small passing comet, and it basically separated the water. So basically electrolysis as we know it in the laboratory separated the water in the atmosphere, and the water, there's probably a little lake there at the time also, where the discharge came down and met the ground, vaporized the water, split the oxygen off of the hydrogens, and now you have hydrogen in a very powerful electrical discharge, and it created a fusion explosion that was probably 20 times larger than the explosion of the bomb at Hiroshima, to give you an example. And so this was not some kind of bolide that came into the atmosphere and exploded. Not at all. And so this is what the cause of the Tunguska event. Now, we have other scars on planet Earth. The Eye of the Sahara is one of them, where an electrical discharge came down and basically melted the sand in the glass. That's what the Eye of the Sahara, look it up. It's just concentric rings. And people say, oh, that was Atlantis. Well, no, it doesn't meet Atlantis at all. There was no ocean there to begin with. There were no reed fields surrounding it. It's still above ground. I mean, How many reasons do you need to know that the Eye of the Sahara is not Atlantis? Just because it has a certain number of rings. But that's another event. Now, if this comet passes Mars, we have very good photograph record of the planet Mars, the entire surface. My weather book, the Principia Meteorologia, the physics of sun-earth weather, the entire 8 pages at the center are high definition photographs of the surface of Mars, the entire surface of Mars. So we have the data. We have what Mars looks like right now. If this object comes by and lets loose a major discharge, which it can, it could relieve Mars of its atmosphere, or it could also give a pollution event. Mars could take on some of the tail material of the comet. But the point is that electrical discharge hitting the surface of Mars would be proof positive that the electrical discharges are reaching Mars from passing comets, because there it is, there's the comet coming in, it's going to pass by Mars, it's going to pass close enough, and it's probably going to have an electrical discharge down to the surface of Mars. Go to all of the space outlets that you can find. You will not find this information anywhere. Will not be anywhere on the standard space.com or whatever. They'll have the pretty pictures, some artist's conception of a snowy nucleus. Picture, they say, paints 1,000 words. And so every time these clowns from Ali Hainau and the yo-yos at the University of Hawaii at the big observatories, every time they post a picture of a snowball that's supposedly a comet, they're just representing that they have no idea what's going on. They're still living in the astronomical cave ages. But the end result is that we can see real data, and now we've seen NASA time and time again hide data. Let me bring up this guy Hainau. Back in the mid-1990s, during the Hale-Bopp days, there was a big controversy that Hale-Bopp had a companion. Well, Hale-Bopp did have a companion, and it eventually became part of the main nucleus of Hale-Bopp. But Hainau and his compatriots at the University of Hawaii made a big point publicly of saying there wasn't. But at the Canary Island Conference held by the European Space Agency after the passage of Hale-Bopp, the very first topic on the agenda was those same people, Hal Weaver, Ali Hainau, and company, talking about the companion. Purely just, in-your-face lying from astronomers. Lying on one hand and then covering up real data, and never coming back and retracting that from the public record. So anyway, they're famous for hiding data, obstructing data, and the same thing happened with this comet Leonard at Venus. We know they had the Hubble Space Telescope and other telescopes trained on this comet when it was passing Venus, and they hid all the data. And out of the blue one day came the passage of this comet by planet Venus in the SOHO cameras, which they forgot to turn off. And so we saw the comet interacting with the comet Venus, as I predicted. But you would not get a response out of any of these astronomers. That is the entire point. I mean, talk about, it's just a level of corruption in science where they want to keep their lofty positions, their position of grant money, of funding, of publication, of control of the news media that goes out to you, the public. It's really pretty pathetic. Okay, so now I want to talk about what is the possibility that this nucleus is really large. In other words, the scenario that I talked about, which is a good possibility. They're talking about a range from 6 to 20 kilometers across. That's the latest thing I've heard prior to this show. And that'll probably change within a day once they get larger telescopes on this astronomical body. But there again, if what they're assuming is that this object is white and is really black, the albedo, the amount of light reflected off the percentage of light reflected off the object, is much lower, then the object would be much larger. So let's say it's up to 100 kilometers across. Okay, that's still not big enough to cause gravitational damage on Mars. It could cause the electrical discharges. It could cause electrical discharges to the moons of Mars. Those are sitting out there, very likely targets for an electrical discharge, not only the planet Mars, but the moons also. And also to change their orbits. We know their orbits very well. But now say that it's not 100 times larger, but 1,000 times larger. So we're talking about something potentially literally the size of Mars itself. Now, because it's moving very quickly, this would set up a gravitational wave in the surface of Mars, which would cause tectonic issues. Mars has a lot of structure very similar to Earth's. It's an old planet, and if this object were large, and quite frankly, I don't think it's going to be large. I think they're probably correct on this one, although I don't know. I'm just saying, what if? What if it turns out that the calculations they're making are erroneous, because that is the case. They are making erroneous calculations. The question is, how bad is it? How bad, how far off are they? And what was their assumption about the original albedo of the object, the reflectivity of solar light? What is the value they use? They never talk about this. See, this is all hand waving. And they assume that you, the public, are stupid, and you wouldn't understand if they talked about albedo or reflectivity or percentage of sunlight reflected or the possibility that their albedo measurement is completely wrong. Astronomers don't talk about this. It's all this fluffy-duffy, lingo that really doesn't give you any real information, because they are assuming you're stupid. And they're pawning off a bunch of garbage science on you, and they're certainly not giving you enough information, or somebody trained like myself, certainly not giving enough information to make a good determination of what they're actually doing. And like I said, they could use radio telescopes to determine the actual size very accurately, but they're not doing that. Why do they use these ridiculous, prone to error methods of determining the nucleus size? Why is the nucleus size important? Because it's a way they can keep their dirty snowball comet model alive. Because if all of a sudden the nuclei of comets are planet-sized, they got a problem. They got a problem because they've been saying for all these decades and hundreds of years, that comets are these little teeny puffballs, couldn't hurt a thing. Maybe they'll collide with Earth one day, but probably not, and you don't have to worry. You can go home at bed at night, pay your car insurance, your house insurance, your mortgage, and send the kids to college and teach them all this garbage science, and no one will be the wiser. That's the game they're playing. Okay, so just what if? What if the object is really large? And like I say, I don't have any reason to believe it is, other than the bogus calculation methods they use to determine comet nucleus size. Here's another thing I want to talk about. What if Mars goes comet? Now, this is an issue that this is an issue that let me give an example. Here we go. Let's go back to Comet Holmes. This was probably early 2000s. Let me get a date for Comet Holmes here. Okay, so this was Comet Holmes 2007, and I actually had made a prediction, much like the one we're doing here, because Comet Holmes had a history of being excited into becoming a large comet. And so I looked into it and I said, okay, on this particular date, it's between Mars and Jupiter. There was an electrical alignment between Mars and Jupiter and Comet Holmes in the middle. I said, well, this would be a good opportunity for this comet to expand its electrical discharge and grow just by fantastic amounts, which it did. And so the official explanation is that amorphous ice changed to crystalline ice underneath the surface, and that caused the comet to go from a 17 magnitude up to a 2.5 magnitude in a matter of days. Well, gee, isn't that special? I mean, you know, comets don't even have ice on them, especially a small comet like Comet Holmes. It's an electrical discharge, and it's very predictable what happened when it came between Mars and Jupiter. And that is why, looking into next March 3rd to 6th, somewhere in that time frame, maybe as early as March 1st, this comet will start to connect electrically with Jupiter. And that's when the fireworks might begin, where we'll see, I mean, potentially Jupiter is already going comet. It has a very long tail, very long discharge of the solar capacitor. And this comet interacting with Jupiter, because, for example, the comet Schumacher-Levy 9, there are 21 pieces. The comet came in. As these pieces came into Jupiter, oh, this is another thing, too, that this comet could become a sulfur dioxide comet. I had forgotten about that. The Schumacher-Levy 9 comet, 21 pieces come in. In fact, the cover of my book, Comets, has this as a cover photo. 21 pieces of comet Schumacher-Levy 9 turning into sulfur dioxide comets. Well, why is that? It's not because that magically all of a sudden they started exuding sulfur dioxide from the nucleus. No. Jupiter is, the environment around Jupiter is a high concentration of sulfur dioxide. That's why Io is red. It's a volcanic planet orbiting the moon, you might call it. It's a planet orbiting Jupiter. But the sulfur dioxide is more prevalent in the region of Jupiter. So this comet could become a sulfur dioxide comet as it approaches Jupiter instead of being a water comet. So that's something that's very likely. And then it should experience some explosive brightening about this time. And it's very predictable. So the funny thing is, NASA always goes when they need an excuse for when something happened. Oh, an asteroid hit it. That was their original explanation for Comet Holmes, until it got so ridiculous that they couldn't pawn that off on the public anymore. So they go with this more complicated amorphous ice to crystalline ice, whatever that does. That's about as stupid of explanation as I could imagine. That's almost as stupid as the asteroid hit it explanation. But at any rate, you can see what's going on here. The hiding of data from NASA, the using your equipment that you paid for. See, I hope I make it to the end of the show, just a few more minutes. And hiding of data, hiding of information, and pretending like they're the experts. This has been going on for decades. But anyway, this comet becoming a sulfur dioxide comet in March of 2026. Okay, I just want to remind you that the web page, I have a water filter company. It's called JMCC Waterfilters, plural.com. Go there, and there's a big sale on. It ends this coming Sunday, August 3rd. The whole house water filter, MR5, is on sale for a huge discount. Also, the replacement filter elements for the MR5 are on sale, and then also the 7-inch filters for the gravity water filters are on sale. Go to the jmccsci.com webpage, and check out my books. All of my books are there in ebook format and DVDs. All of that is available to educate yourself on the science related to my work. So once again, the web pages for the water filters, the water filter webpage, jmccwaterfilters.com, and the science page, jmccsci.com. We'll talk to you next week.
This has been Master of Science with host James McCanney. Join us each week as James will delve into historical figures such as Nikola Tesla, Albert Einstein, and the great mathematicians as we explore the history of man, Earth, and our universe as you've never seen it before. Tuesdays, 7 p.m. Eastern,